In this video, we'll talk a little bit about how to manage tenants if you're selling a townhouse in New York City. I'm Niket Housett. Visit housett.com to learn how to save money if you are looking to buy, sell, or rent in New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley, as well as South Florida. So let's get started. So the first tip for how to manage tenants with a townhouse when you're selling in New York City is to hopefully have used a lease that actually gives you the right to access your property for showings. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but the good news is that your typical lease template that is widely used in New York City typically always has this sort of language included. So go ahead and double check, just make sure that that's in there, and reread whatever parameters may have been included in that stock language within the lease and make sure you follow them. The tenant may definitely also take a look as well, just to figure out what's going on, so make sure you have a handle on the language that's contained in the lease. Now, when you start the conversation with the tenants, certainly the first thing you want to do is remind them of the fact that they, of course, have the right to remain in the property as per the original lease terms. Whenever you sell a townhouse or any other property, the lease, in effect, obviously remains in full effect. So it cannot be commuted or canceled or reversed in any way without the permission, of course, of the tenant. So a lot of tenants aren't necessarily aware of that, though. They may not be in this situation before. So when you have that conversation, start out by simply saying, just want to make it clear, of course, you are entitled to remain in the property through the maturation of your current lease and so forth. That would definitely be the way to start that dialogue. Now, the most important part of the process for managing tenants, if you are selling a townhouse, is to really try and set clear expectations with respect to access protocols for showings. Obviously, many tenants can be quite unnerved about the possibility of random strangers coming into the property. That's the first concern. But the second concern, which compounds on top, is not only, A, I have to show people in my property, but B, I don't know how often. Is it going to be like every day, every evening, 3 times a day? There's just so much uncertainty there. So the best way to go about doing it is just to be very upfront with them and tell them that, for starters, you've instructed your listing agent to be extremely thorough in vetting the financials of anybody who expresses an interest in seeing the property. So in other words, you're subtly hinting to your tenant that you are making sure that if anyone does enter the property, there has been some level of diligence. You're not just showing it to anyone and everyone who takes the 30-second initiative to request a viewing. So I think that will put them in a good mood and make it very clear that you're very much on their side and you empathize with their potential concerns about their time being wasted. But moving forward, to be more granular, we recommend telling the tenant to be prepared for showings, typically on Sunday, which is the customary open house day, and let them know a specific window of time, maybe hour and a half, perhaps 2 hours would be preferred. For example, Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And tell them that you'll make every effort to put all of the showings within that time slot consistently every weekend. Of course, you do want to plan for the inevitability of somebody saying that they're unavailable for that open house, but try to compartmentalize that with the tenant and tell them, hey, there'll be no more than 2 or 3 appointments during a particular week outside of the open house window. And I think by doing that, you'll really address that second stress source for them, which is, okay, I have to let people in my house, but is it going to be every 5 minutes? Do I have to constantly clean my apartment or my unit within the townhouse? So just to summarize, a 2-hour window on Sundays and say no more than 2 or 3 showings per week outside of that open house window. And once you have their expectations set, your listing agent can be completely gung-ho about putting number of showings into that window, whether it's 5, 10 people. It doesn't really matter because the tenant has agreed to provide you with that access. But of course, it's way less stress-inducing on the part of the tenant to just say, you have to be out of the property for 2 hours while we do showings, as opposed to saying, hey, we have request 1, we have request 2, we have request 3, and you send 10 separate requests. We'll probably blow a fuse or something in the tenant's mind there. So we definitely don't want that. Now, one other tip for managing tenants with your sale is to make sure you set clear expectations with respect to any health and safety protocols. Obviously, we've gone through the pandemic, which hopefully is fully in the rearview mirror, depending on when you're watching this video. But nevertheless, the lasting legacy of that may very well be that some people just are more prudent about the rules and expectations that they have with guests entering their property. So while at the same time you don't want to create additional rules and other red tape when it comes to showing your tenants units, you also want to make sure that whatever preferences they may have, whether it's taking shoes off, face coverings, whatever is reasonable that they put forward, you should definitely agree to in order to make the process feasible and sustainable during the overall sale endeavor. And the final tip we'll leave you with is to make sure that your tenants understand that there still will be a need for access of the property even after there's a quote-unquote accepted offer. Even after the contract is signed, there will still be physical need to access the property, for example, for an appraisal, perhaps for a survey, and certainly for the pre-closing walkthrough that is done by the purchaser as well as the brokers involved. So just again, reiterate that while the majority of the showings, of course, will happen before there's an accepted offer, we will need access just a handful of times in order to actually close out the transaction. So we hope that was helpful, and if you are selling a townhouse in New York City, we can save you money, up to 6% in fact, through our Houseit Assisted FSBO service. You can check out our website, houseit.com. You can also see all of our closed transactions by visiting our website, houseit.com. We also have a 1% full service offering if you're looking to save money, but you are hoping for a more traditional approach to selling your home in New York City. I'm Nick at Houseit, and we'll see you on the next video.